Hello and what's up? We are back at it again. It is In the Lab with Hoopsology, our sixth episode of this season of the show. And we're going to be talking about some Eastern Conference rankings, some seeding predictions, how the regular season is going to go down. Can't wait for it. But first, I need to introduce who I'm joined by, as always, my best friend and co-host, Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Battling some StreamYard technical difficulties, but made it here. How about yourself?
Man, you and me both, we're going to be on edge this episode. I think, we're going to try not to take it out on each other, but I kid you not, I almost called you because I was stuck in traffic for about 90 minutes
Oh
after
no.
running my usual afternoon errands. Yeah, the
Yeah.
freeway was just shut down.
Oh man.
And it was like, no matter what road you picked, Albuquerque was just at a standstill.
Oh,
You
bummer.
know how it is in Albuquerque. We're very spoiled for a near major city in that we don't get much traffic. So like anything more than a 5-minute delay feels egregious, which I know those of you listening from big cities, that's laughable to you all. But hey, man, it's Albuquerque problems, all right? And we're feeling it. Wanted to get your thoughts too, Justin, just speaking along the lines of current events and other rambling before we dive in. What are your thoughts on the Logan Paul Dylan Dennis fight? Had to ask you as a fight fan.
Oh boy. We got a huge Eastern Conference preview. I'll try to keep this as concise as possible. Dylan Dennis. Let me say this first. So, oh man, he got my brain rumbling. So I'll say this. So the zone, they have two different philosophies in boxing. You got your real fighters, and then you have what's called your influencer too. So it's under the Misfits banner. And so the main event was Tommy Fury versus KSI, and then Dylan Downs versus Logan Paul, and he had a bunch of influencers fighting underneath that. So I am a huge combat sports fan, as you guys may have known. Um, you know, I it's just a weird thing because I don't understand, because to me, I'm a pro wrestling fan also. So I get like theatrics and I get like the storyline being more important than the actual confrontation, match, whatever you want to call it in the end. That makes sense. That's been a thing that's happened in pro wrestling all the time. The problem is in pro wrestling, you have a storyline in which you can keep the people going in terms of afterwards. And Dylan, it's very clear that this was just a sideshow. And Logan Paul is a very amateur boxer, and his brother is actually a pretty decent boxer. Not, I would say, elite level, but certainly entry pro level. Absolutely.
For
So,
an influencer.
yeah, exactly. And I would say probably more that he has some skill from what I have seen from other experts who know more than me. But yeah, it's just a sideshow. And it's just very unfortunate that a lot of younger people that are getting into boxing that normally wouldn't have, they see that and they think that's what boxing is. Here, we've seen a lot of great fights in the world of boxing, but unfortunately, because boxing, it's such an individual sport where you have such, in terms of one-off fights and not continuity like the UFC or Bellator or PFL, you get with these misfits, which honestly they have more of a storyline than regular boxing does in terms of following the fighters. It just hurts the sport overall. So it just sucked to see that. Dylan Dennis is just a horrible human being. I'll keep it as at that. Logan Paul's not too much better, but it is what it is. I would not pay $60. Just catch the highlights on Twitter. So I can go
Yeah,
on all day. We're not a combat sports podcast, but you asked me. So
yeah. Oh, no. I wanted your thoughts. And you know what's funny is we had been texting about it, and I was kind of following some of the drama on
yeah,
X. And what's funny is, in spite of following both of the gentlemen, using that term loosely, I didn't know for the life of me when the fight actually was. I just
yeah.
would see the drama on the timeline, but I had no idea when the fight was. I wouldn't have paid to watch it anyway, but I just found that interesting, is like through the whole time, I couldn't tell you when that
Yeah.
fight date actually was. So I don't know. A lot of the drama fell short of the mark in terms of marketing the actual fight. So like you said earlier, Justin, we've got a lot to get into today. We'll jump in, get back to being a basketball podcast here. Want to let you guys know that you can reach out to us at hoopsologypod@gmail.com. If email is the method you prefer, you can follow us on all social media. And you can also check on our backlog. Lots of great interviews that have been released the past couple of weeks, getting you ramped up for the start of the regular season. And you can check out our full library of episodes on YouTube as well, if that's more your thing. So without further ado, Justin, we did this for the Western Conference last week. Many of you probably saw that. We ranked our 1 through 15. We're not saying necessarily who the best team or the worst team is in the Eastern Conference. We're just saying how we see the rankings fall 1 through 15. We've got some over-unders from Vegas to help provide some context here as far as how our picks compare to what Vegas is thinking. And Justin, let's go ahead and dive right in with our first team. I want you to go ahead and lead with your list.
Yeah, so I'll kick us off. And on number 1, I have the Boston Celtics. I think we're going to see a little bit more variance compared to the Western Conference list. I
Yeah.
think we agreed on a lot of stuff. Eastern Conference, what I'm seeing here, we might vary in some different picks. And I think it's a lot more, I think, somewhat easier to determine, hey, these are the teams that have a chance compared to a lot of the bottom feeders. But going back to my pick, the Celtics, I think with the pressure of this year, the roster moves that they have made, the addition of Drew Holiday, I think they're going to be the number 1 seed when it's all said and done. Now, are they going to be the favorites to win the title? I don't. I do not.
They are right now. Yeah.
But not in my opinion. I mean, we've seen in recent years there hasn't, to me, in terms of talent, there's not like there's other teams that have been more talented than the Celtics in recent years. They've had every single advantage to win the title. They have not gotten it done. So I am very skeptical in terms of the playoffs, but regular season games, just with talent, I see them getting, it looks like they're around 54. I would say I'll take the over. I think they're going to get 60 wins this year. Does that mean they're going to win the championship? I don't think so.
Yeah. And you know, our 1 and 2, I think we both agree that there's a top 2 teams in the East. And we'll talk about the other team in a minute here. But just to give some other thoughts about the Celtics real quick, over under for them, like you said, 54.5 games. I see them doing a little bit worse in the regular season simply because they lost pieces off of that bench that they were trading in, and kind of, I think, for a team that is relying on a lot of veterans now, it would be handy for them to have that extra depth. I think the moves that they made are great. You and I have covered that. I think it serves them well, makes them a more elite tier team for the playoffs. For the regular season wins, not so sure about that. If they're healthy, then they can probably get by on, you know, being 7 or 8 deep throughout the regular season. But I do think the loss of Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, overall does reduce their depth and the options they have to throw out there, might translate to less regular season wins. And also, I think this is a team that isn't going to need to be too concerned about being the 1 seed. I think they would certainly like to have it if they can, but they don't need it. So I can't argue with the Celtics being the 1 pick. I'll move right into my number 1 pick, which is your number 2 pick, the Milwaukee Bucks. And I think I'm banking on a little bit more health from Chris Middleton. And I think, quite honestly, just trusting in Giannis, Dame, and Middleton a little bit more than Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis in terms of relying on that to carry through the regular season. I think much like with the Celtics, honestly, who cares about regular season wins for the Bucks? Just make sure you have one of those top 4 seeds and you're going to be in the mix for the playoffs, and arguably even without the top 4 seeds. I think the addition of Dame as a big star provides more of a spark to the Bucks, and maybe more of like tinder to ignite the dynamite for the Bucks. compared to like the addition of Porzingis, who is an excellent third option for the Celtics. But I think there's going to be a little bit more swagger, maybe a little bit more incentive to want to flex at the top of the Eastern Conference from the Bucks. Honestly, this could go either way, and I think this is going to be a really tough matchup to predict in the playoffs. I hope we get it because on paper it looks like it's going to be amazing. Your thoughts on the Bucks?
Yeah, just real quick, I concur what you're saying, even though we differ. And I believe in Damian Lillard just in terms of, because I know there's a lot of hesitation if him working with Giannis, but I really think Dame will sacrifice his numbers to win. I don't think he's the guy just to be griping about not getting the ball or there's some kind of, I don't know what you would call it. Just him not getting along with Giannis. I just don't see that happening. I think
Totally.
they're really true professionals. So, I think they're somewhat interchangeable. I think I don't know. I just like the Celtics roster better, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
certainly, things can go wrong and they can be interchangeable. So I think this top five is extremely, extremely unpredictable. So I can't really argue with the points of what you said.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is very close. I mean, the Bucks also 54 and a half games is their
Yeah.
over under. I think you could make an argument that both the Bucks and Celtics, if healthy, should be predicted to hit the over on their numbers. I think what we're going to see as we go down our list is that the Eastern Conference, we have more variance in our picks. I think there is less depth. We're back to the Western Conference being the Western Conference with the moves that happened last season, and we're going to see more variance in the East. Our third picks differ as well. Why don't you go ahead and give me yours? We'll talk about yours first.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a surprise. I have to admit, this is maybe more of a pick with my heart than with my brain. But I put the 76ers as number three. I get it. You have the James Harden distraction. Who knows when he's going to be traded? We have no idea if he's going to play. He said him and Daryl Morey. I'm paraphrasing, but they hate each other. The relationship is not salvageable. I totally understand.
The man that built him
Right.
in many ways.
No, it's true.
Yeah,
but I believe in
it's
Joel
sour.
Embiid. I just ever since I did fantasy that one year. This. I really liked this game, and it's a situation where if you're James Harden and if he does play, especially with Joel Embiid, it's just hard for me to believe that he would just, I don't know, just
Hold out or
hold out and cost
Yeah.
his team chances of winning
I agree.
and put him and just be selfish. That's just I don't know. As much as I think James Harden is kind of overrated, and I've been unhappy with his behavior, I do like the guy's game, and I just don't think he'd be that selfish enough to do that. So that's where I'm going with number three. I realize like Vegas has him at 48.5. That makes sense, but I can easily see this blown up in my face, and we can easily see one of the other teams kind of take their spot. If there's an injury or there's drama. This can go south really quickly, to be honest. All the teams in the playoff hunt, they are the most volatile, in my opinion. So I'm realizing I'm taking a huge chance, but we'll see.
No, I like this pick from a talent standpoint. Obviously, my list is a little different here, but still projected 48 and a half wins. Could be easy to see this team if Harden plays all year, which I think, honestly, Harden should kind of wake up and realize that you've got last season's MVP on your team. This is your best spot right here. If the mission is truly to win a title, I know you feel slighted by Daryl Morey, but you signed into that contract. Get out there and play, have a good year, and another team is going to take a chance on you. I mean, you can't tell me, Charlotte wouldn't clear some cap space to make sure James Harden is secured next season if James Harden is a free agent. I mean, they would do that right now, I think, if they had the option. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Harden ends up a Clipper or not. I'm leaning towards probably no from things that I'm seeing. But regardless, I hate to bring this up because, it's a bummer to think about, but I do think Embiid's health is a real concern. We've seen good health last season. And I think it's fair to ask, how motivated is he going to be throughout the year? Is he going to be going for another MVP push? What's going to be the deal there? And also, how are they going to adjust to Nick Nurse, who I think is, I would argue, a better coach as far as X's and O's go than Doc Rivers? I don't know if he'll be a better coach chemistry wise on a team that you're coming in with a lot of volatility in terms of the chemistry there. So questions that we need to have answered. I'm going to go ahead and move on into my third pick, Justin. And so you've got the Sixers at 3. I've got the Cavs at 3. 50.5 games is their over under. I would actually probably pick the under just slightly on this. 50 wins sounds about right to me for the Cavs. But I do think that this team got a little bit deeper. I like the addition of Strus from the Heat to this team, even though I think it's a slight overpay for them. I think they realize that Donovan Mitchell probably isn't coming back next year. And so there's every incentive to push to be a contender this year, to be certainly getting home court advantage. So I see them as high likelihood of being a top 4 seed. I've got them here at 3. I think if Mobley improves, he had kind of a disappointing playoffs and a disappointing season compared to his debut season. If he can make some strides and improve as well, then this team is set up for certainly at least a lot of regular season success with the depth of their roster. Give me your thoughts on the Cavs.
Yeah, the Cavs, man, I kind of was riding high on them last year. This year, they make me nervous. There's them getting bounced by the Knicks like that. And I don't know. I get it. I mean, I have them at, I guess I can spoil it. I have them at 5. So that's not too much of a difference there. I agree with you. I don't see them getting at 50 wins. I go slightly lower than that. I love Donovan Mitchell. But to me, I think that, I don't know. I just don't think they have the grittiness. And, even last year, I thought there were some games that I thought they should have won in the regular season. So
coaching is a question too.
Yeah, I have my doubts in terms of them being an elite team in that top 5, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's go into what I think is our probably biggest disagreement on the list. A team that I think both you and I at least disrespect, or at least respect, if not like. I personally love this franchise, but give me your number 4 pick.
Well, again, I have to admit, some of this list is full of emotion. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've been both kind of underestimating the Heat in our past season previews. I'm not going to do that this year. Despite them not getting Donovan Mitchell, this roster stays intact. I get what Jeremy Taché said about Tyler Hero being involved in the trade talks and that possibly having a negative effect on him, but it could have a positive effect too. And especially with Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think this team thrives on being underestimated, being disrespected, and turmoil. And I think that's going to be a huge boost for them this season. So that's why I have them on as a number 4 seed. And to me, I think they're always a threat. I mean, look what their track record has been the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, you can't deny compared to the other teams with better talent on this list, the Heat have done more with possibly less. So to me, I really see them being a top team in the Eastern Conference. But I get there's a bunch of negatives there, and I'm taking a huge chance and picking them. But I'm kind of sick of underestimating them in our past season previews. So,
yeah, and I certainly respect the Heat as well. Been kind of a fan of theirs for a long time and what they've done in the organization. But I think where I see it playing out differently is that what's the incentive after last year when you go in the play-in tournament? I think this is a team that has confidence to the extent that, hey, we could be the 10 seed coming in and we're going to make it to the finals. Let's do that this year round. Not that that's the target, certainly, but I do think that there is sort of an odd kind of confidence and swagger there that you like to see. And I love me some Jimmy Butler, especially, man, after the 2020 postseason and then after the postseason we just saw last year, or earlier this summer, I should say. So there is the talent there for sure. To your point about Tyler Hero, I loved his response about like Portland doesn't want me. I don't want to be there. That's fine. They're not on the up and up. I want to be on a team that's on the up and up. I think it's looked good so far for Tyler Hero. I like what I'm seeing there too. They lost Strus. They lost Gabe Vincent, which I think are contributing pieces. There is always the thought that the Heat could bring more guys out of nowhere that we just haven't heard of and make them talents as well. So there is the risk of that. They're over under 45 and a half. And honestly, I just see them kind of having the confidence to ride at a lower seed if they need to. Also, the age of Lowry, I think, is a real concern, and finding a replacement for him. I don't think they can feel like as solid of contenders as they did last year if they're still rolling Lowry out there as starting point guard. I think they need to address that, and I think they will. I think we'll see them do something maybe at the trade deadline. 45 and a half. You have them the 4 seed, which I don't think is a ridiculous pick. I have them as the 8 seed, so that's definitely our biggest difference on the list, and I could see it play out either way. In fairness, I'll go into my 4 seed, and this is a team that both you and I were kind of side rooting on last year, just with some of the guests that we had on that we enjoyed, just kind of vicariously rooting for this team through them. That's the New York Knicks, over under at 45 and a half games as well. Same number as the Miami Heat that we just spoke about had. And my note here is that I'm giving them the Tom Thibodeau try hard bump. We know that no matter what happens, even if the roster isn't as talented, the Knicks or any team that Tom Thibodeau, more specifically, is coaching, is always going to try hard. We had Jalen Brunson participate in the World Cup, look pretty solid there overall, solid contributor. I always give a little bonus to a player that plays on the world stage like that, so he gets a bump there for me. And I think this team is just going to continue to improve and just kind of hover in the weightings. Can we get Giannis? Can we get Embiid? Can we get Luka? They're hovering in that zone where they're just kind of setting the table, rolling the carpet out for that star to come to the promised land and bring them the title that they've so desperately wanted. I've got them as the 4 seed. I don't think they are 4 seed talented, but again, I think the effort is going to get them there. What are your thoughts on the Knicks?
I have them at the 6th seed. I just think with Julius Randle, he has been inconsistent. I like Jalen Brunson. I just think with the Knicks overall, they kind of remind me of the Bulls, but just better. I mean, what is ultimately with the Knicks, what is the end game here? Because you take a look at the other teams on this list, they have all-star, Hall of Famers, that are above them. And with the Knicks, what is the objective? Is it just, like you're saying, Matt, just have enough assets to get a superstar player? Is it to what we've seen with a lot of hardcore Knicks fans and influencers build towards the future with younger talent? I mean, what is exactly the end game here? Because you take a look at some of the other teams, even in the Western Conference, like your Houston Rockets, ton of young talent that you can see that's flourishing. And I just don't see that with the Knicks ultimately in terms of their future. So, I mean, right now I'm just wondering, the Knicks have been terrible. So I think with their fans, at the same time, Knicks they have a sense of entitlement where they think they've won like 20 titles, which they have not. So I'm just wondering, as we go on, 3 or 4 years, and the Knicks are like the 6th seed, the 4th seed, the 3rd seed, and get bounced, and they never make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, ultimately, what is their ultimate objective? That's where I'm wondering with them.
Yeah, and I think it's purely arms race. Like, build a good culture and bring a star in. They still need top tier talent in there to get over that hurdle. That would be my answer. Of course, we'll have plenty of chances over the season to ask that question to guests that we bring in. Moving right along, why don't we let's see. So you had the Heat at 4. I had the Knicks at 4. I had the Sixers at 5, who you had at 3. You had the Cavs at 5, who I had at 3. So that brings us to Let's go with my 6 seed, which also lines up with your 7 seed, the Atlanta Hawks, which I think are somewhat of an enigma in terms of how this roster is built. Major change from this year to last year. Well, 2 changes. John Collins is on the Utah Jazz right now, so they moved off of him, and also Quinn Snyder has a full season to work with these guys. Historically, a very good regular season coach. We didn't see the results in the postseason, unfortunately, for Coach Snyder, but sign me up for the Snyder Cut this year for the Atlanta Hawks. They're at 42 and a half games. I see them more as like a 45 win team. I'm pretty comfortable picking the over with them. I think this is a team that's kind of under the radar and kind of still has a lot to prove to get back to that perception that they received for making it all the way to the Eastern Conference, I think 3 years ago at this point. So a lot to prove for them. I think Trae Young is still hungry to do that. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he should, because there are a lot of doubters. So sign me up for the Hawks as the 6th seed. Justin, give me your thoughts on the Hawks.
Yeah, we had Pat Benson from Sports Illustrated last year, and I remember him saying the Hawks were in disarray. And so it's quite the miracle with Quinn Snyder to really to see them salvage whatever season they had last season. So I'm not opposed to your optimism. I mean, I picked them at 7, so I think we're pretty much aligned there. I just don't see them better than the other teams at the higher seeding. And again, this is a situation where, are you going to be able to make Trae Young happy for the future of this team? I just don't know. So I echo what you're saying.
And I think the other big question, sorry to jump in, but is Trae Young can't be the number one option on a title contender. Yeah. And Trae Young doesn't realize that yet.
No.
And I think that's the harsh truth of it. And I wonder how that's going to play out, because the other thing I'd say about the Hawks is once we get to the playoffs, I think they're toast. I think they're first round exit. I mean, unless we really see some different things in the regular season that we haven't seen before from a Trae Young squad. I feel pretty comfortable predicting that all the way out before the season even tips off.
No, totally agree.
Let's move on. Justin, I'll let you lead this one. This is my 7 seed and your 8 seed.
Yeah, let's go with the Pacers. Not too much to add here. I think we're getting towards kind of the bottom of the conference. The Pacers are kind of a sleeper team. I think they've always been that way. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're involved in that big trade with Sacramento. So I think
Halliburton's their big piece. He just signed that like super max extension. He's going to be paid handsomely for it.
Yeah, for sure. So I think if you take a look at the squad, I think they have dealt with a lot of adversity too. And you take a look at Halliburton, he only played 56 games last season. So if he stays healthy, they could surprise some people. So I don't know. In my mind, I had them ranked, in that 8 seed position. But again, I think we're kind of going, I think we're pretty much aligned with a lot of our picks. We're just differ from like a seed or 2. I think this depends on health. But again, in terms of this is not the Eastern Conference, of like 2005, where it's like one good team. There are a lot of solid teams in this list. And I think with the Pacers, looking at these other teams here, as we'll get to later, I just don't see those other teams posing any kind of threat to them just based on their consistency last season. So,
yeah, and I think the stage is set here for Tyrese Halliburton to become a household name in the league. I think he's the player I would put as the most talked about player that most people have never watched him play.
Yeah,
it's time to change that. He's got the money. he's being paid as one of the best in the league, and maybe deservedly so. But I think it's time for him to prove that. Should be, I think, an exciting year. And we're also going to see now, we're kind of quickly out of the rebuilding phase. I mean, it's kind of a rebuild while you're a playoff contender, kind of what the Celtics were doing years ago when they first brought in all those picks under Danny Ainge. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they're a serious player when it comes to playoff times. I do think they may be one of those sneaky hustle teams getting extra wins because of that. So maybe playing above the talent on the roster. They also have a lot of continuity on this team, bringing a lot of similar names back. So we'll see what Rick Carlisle can do with them. And I think if they have a really rough season, he may even be on the hot seat even with as much goodwill as he has built up with that franchise. Justin, I want to go to your number 9 pick because I have to admire the stones that you show here in picking this pick at number 9. Granted, I don't have them much further. I've got them at 10, but I love this pick at 9. Why don't you throw it on us?
I like Paolo Banchero. That's pretty much the only reason why I have them at number 9. And really, I like their grittiness. They kind of have like a swag to them. Like if you take a look at, is it Franz Wagner?
That's right. Yeah.
And then, God, what's his name?
Mo Wagner.
Yeah, both. Yeah, that's right. Both.
Wendell Carter. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Cole Anthony, right? Is he still on there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, they just have kind of a swagger to this team that's unexpected. Like this is going to be a team you can't just trample over. So that's why I have them at the 9th seed. I don't think they're talented enough to really make any noise in terms of a playoff run, but I don't see them as scrubs either. And I see them having a lot more optimism than the rest of these teams that are below them. So,
yeah, and this is another one of those teams that could be one of those try-hard teams where they get wins above their actual talent level. Banchero was impressive on the World Cup stage.
Agreed.
So excited for the Magic, hoping they can make some noise with that young core there. They're one of those teams that, like the Ringer and a lot of other sites were kind of talking as like this could be a sneaky Dame Lillard situation. Like there's kind of this, a lot like the Knicks, like there's things set here that would be fun to play with. We just need another elite level star to really take it to the next level. But hey, a lot of teams are in that boat. But the Magic are uniquely set up with some interesting pieces there that could be useful in a deep playoff run. Yeah. Anything else on the Magic?
No, that's it for me. They'd be one more thing. They'd be a great league pass team or league pass sleeper. So.
I agree, especially maybe for, the second half of the game you're watching kind of goes awry, flip over to the Magic, see what Banchero is going to do that night. With you there. I'm going to move into my number 9 team. I had the Magic at 10. My number 9 team, 37.5 over under for their win total. It's the Brooklyn Nets. And I think this is the Mikal Bridges all-star year. He made some noise towards the end of the year last season. And I do like Jacques Vaughn as a head coach. Those are the main things I'm counting on with the Nets. Now, all right, first season mention of this, we got to bring up Ben Simmons, who is hitting jump shots in the preseason, in practice videos, all this stuff. It's the elusive, Ben Simmons. Check out my jump shots. Of course, you and I think, are both in agreement. We got to see it during NBA games to have any impact on us at this point. It's just like how the Clippers are out of our circle of trust we talked about last episode. Ben Simmons, you're out of the circle of trust too, and I think you got a lot of proving to do there. But I do think the Nets are talented enough to at least get into this play-in tournament, even if they sneak by at number 10 or so. And Justin, that you have them just outside of the play-in tournament. Give me just some quick thoughts on the Nets.
Yeah. I know they actually held down to 4th after the big roster changes last season. I agree with you. Jacques Vaughn is a pretty solid coach. I just don't know. I just saw them play and I just wasn't really impressed with them, to be honest. But again, I don't have too much thoughts in it. Again, I'm exhausted with Ben Simmons. I don't know. If he becomes an all-star, then I'll be totally down to talk about him again. But it is what it is. I just think he's a mediocre player in this league, and people just leave him alone, let the guy develop. So,
yeah, let's move on to your 10 seed. Why don't you lay it on us?
Yeah, my 10 seed is the Raptors. Not too much to add here with them. Just taking a look at their roster, it's not bad. If you take a look at, I really like Scotty Barnes' game. I think he is going to be an elite player in this league. Pascal Siakam, shout out to New Mexico State. I think he I think he's an all-star too. I think that take a look at a lot of the roster here. OG Anunoby, they don't have bad players. I just wonder kind of what the future of this franchise is going to be. I mean, they're kind of in a weird spot, losing really the heart and soul of this team, arguably with Fred VanVleet. And even before years ago when they won the title with Kawhi Leonard, I think ever since then they've been in this weird pattern as well. And not to mention they lost their coach with Nick Nurse. So what is this going to be the future of this team? I don't know. That's where I have them at 10 at this point. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think their win-loss over-under is 36.5 games. My question here with this team, so much talk. I mean, OG Anunoby was the hottest trade commodity for a while there for the entire trade deadline last season. And I do wonder if they are getting set up to blow things up. We know that they let go of Nick Nurse. He's now with the 76ers. And I wonder if the stage is set. Siakam has made it clear he just wants to play for the Raptors. So I do wonder, though. I mean, he doesn't have a no trade clause. Raptors can kind of do what they want as far as that goes. If they're looking to kind of reset, I would assume they hold on to Scotty Barnes and just reset, try to get more pieces around him. I don't know. They're kind of in a weird spot, like you say. So with that, I'm hesitant to predict them making the play-in tournament this year just because it could go further south, I think, and maybe even intentionally so. Although overall, this season so far, there aren't super hot prospects. There's not like a Wemby in this draft. So maybe teams are a little bit more gung-ho about just trying to be genuinely successful and not tank towards the end of the year. We'll see what happens as far as that goes. Moving right along, Justin, I got to give you the floor first for this next pick for both you and I. Agreement here on the 12 seed. Go for it.
Yeah, have a massive 12 seed. I think on paper, this is kind of for, I guess, people that don't follow Chicago that often, it's kind of a sexier pick to maybe make some noise as like an 8-9 seed. But I watched this team and they lose games that they should win against inferior teams dramatically. They just fall apart. And I think Zach LaVine's overrated. I love DeMar DeRozan. I think he's fantastic. And Lonzo Ball was clearly the missing piece that made this squad a top tier Eastern Conference team. Who knows if his career is going to, as I've said before, his fate is in question. And I think, without him, I see this team being pretty mediocre, frustratingly so, because I think compared to the other teams on this list, there's either like turmoil a little bit with the Hornets or with the Wizards. We'll get to you later. They're going through a change, and the Pistons, you have some young players. The Bulls are just there's enough spot where it's just they're in purgatory, and I've been on the bandwagon that's blowing this team up. I mean, I just don't see a future with the squad here. And I think if you're just able to get picks for all these players at the trade deadline, I think it's in their best interest. It may not be the greatest time in United Center history, but at this point, I just don't see the squad as they're currently constructed. I think they had a good run. They tried, and it didn't work out. That's cool. So I think it's just in the Bulls' best interest just to move on and just give it up at this point.
Yeah, my note for the Bulls is my same note for the Raptors. Are they blowing it up? That's the question I want to know. And I think there is a chance here as well that we do see them blow it up. They've tried with this lineup for the last 2 years. There's some initial success. Now with Lonzo Ball, that unfortunate situation. I think if he were in the mix, maybe this team looks entirely different and feels entirely different. But when you lose your point guard like that, everything's different. As much credit as you and I both want to give to DeMar DeRozan, I mean, how hot of a pick is he going to look like for a team that's a contender? Like if he can go
time.
Help out, like if the Clippers don't get James Harden and they have an option to land DeMar DeRozan or like, whatever team what if Dallas can make a move for DeMar DeRozan? They could certainly use him just as an all-around chemistry glue guy. There are a lot of teams out there that would like to have DeMar DeRozan is my point.
That's
and
true.
I think the Bulls get a lot of value for the pieces that they have, and they should consider that. Next, I'm going to go right into my number 13 pick. which is actually by over-under standards ranked as the lowest ranking team in the Eastern Conference. Vegas predicts 24 and a half games. This is the Washington Wizards. And I don't know, I guess oddly enough, in spite of the change, in spite of losing Porzingis, they still have pieces here that are a little bit interesting. I think Jordan Poole, we're going to find out quickly what his status is in the league. Like, how good of a scorer is he really? Because Kyle Kuzma isn't going to be able to totally take the pressure off of him. And this is what this team is focused around, at least on the offensive end. It's Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole. Even having said that, Justin, I still feel a little bit more confident about the Wizards' chances for success. They also have a history of trying to push a little bit more than other teams do, even when the talent isn't there. So I don't know. I guess I have more faith in them than the remaining two teams on my list. What are your thoughts on the Wizards?
That makes sense. I mean, they're both kind of interchangeable with the Wizards and Hornets. And we've seen the Wizards actually. I think didn't they go on like a decent run last season?
Yeah.
I think for a few games there. So
Yeah.
not much to add. I think this team again, they're in a rebuilding phase and just moving on from Bradley Beal.
Yep. Two more teams for us to cover here, Justin. This was your 13 pick. I think it's a reasonable pick. Why don't you tell me about your 13 seed here?
Yeah, it's the Hornets, and I just think, just with the drama that they've been through, again, it's get pretty interchangeable. I like LaMelo Ball. I like his game, but to me, all I see with the Hornets is just like them getting in trouble or people hating them on social media. Like
Kai
it's just a lot of
Jones,
it's like a
whole
disaster.
situation.
Yeah, like man, it's unfortunate because I think really with Charlotte, there's something there with that home court, especially when they're getting going. But I just think with the drama, they're going to be a bottom feeder team. And at least the Bulls, at least they don't have drama. So I mean, that's good for that.
Maybe most notable is that Michael Jordan is no longer
That's right.
an owner of this team.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe that leads to future success for them. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't see a whole lot of success for them this year. I do see a lot of drama, and we'll see, where LaMelo Ball is going to go in his career. Can he take a leap? They're certainly going to need him to, if they're going to make any headway into even just the higher ends of the bottom of the Eastern Conference, like sneaking into the play-in tournament. He's going to have a great season. His work is already cut out for him. Last team on both your and my list, we agree. I think actually a lot of people are going to disagree with this, surprisingly enough, simply because of the addition of Monty Williams. But at 28 and a half games, both you and I picked the Pistons as the bottom feeder of the Eastern Conference. And my note here is, where are they going? What are they doing? They have a mishmash of front court players. Unfortunately, we have to talk about health issues with Cade Cunningham. Hopefully he comes in healthy and can play more games this season compared to his sophomore season last year. And if he can, and if he has taken another step up with his game, and if Monty Williams can build a culture on this team and just build some sort of direction, the way that Coach Udoka seems like has started to do in Houston, then maybe they can leapfrog and surprise us. I don't think they have any sort of hope of the play-in tournament with just the pieces on this team right now. But if they make it to the play-in tournament, I mean, maybe Monty Williams belongs on the short list of Coach of the Year candidates in my book. What are your thoughts on the Pistons?
No, I concur. Not too much to add. You wrapped it up pretty succinctly. I mean, this is Kay Cunningham's third year. So, what have you seen the last two? I mean, it's just injuries. It kind of derails their seasons. So I just don't have, when a guy's hurt that much, I mean, two things happen. I think we've seen it with Steph Curry. We've seen it with Joel Embiid in terms of having injuries early in their career and them turning it around. So it's not impossible. But it kind of ruins my optimism when we're seeing that in the first couple of seasons of this guy's career, Kay Cunningham. So echo your sentiments. I think it's going to be another rough year for the Pistons.
Yeah, both you and I are very high on Cade Cunningham coming
Agreed.
into the league.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was kind of disappointed he didn't end up coming to the Rockets. I would have liked to have him there initially, but we'll see what happens in that third year, like you said. And that's going to wrap up our list 1 through 15 of the Eastern Conference. Real quickly, just to read them off in review, I've got the Bucks at number 1, Celtics at number 2, Cavs at number 3, Knicks at number 4, Sixers at number 5, Hawks at number 6, Pacers at 7, Heat at 8, Nets at 9, Magic at 10, Raptors at 11, Bulls at 12, Wizards at 13, Hornets at 14, Pistons at 15. Justin, why don't you give us yours real quick to wrap it up?
Yeah. My Eastern Conference rankings, we got the Celtics at 1, Bucks at 2, 76ers at 3, Heat at 4, the Cavaliers at 5, the Knicks at 6, the Hawks at 7, the Pacers at 8, the Orlando Magic at 9, the Raptors at 10. 11, I have the Nets. The 12, I have my Chicago Bulls. Hopefully they blow up their season. 13 is the Hornets. 14 is the Wizards. And rounding out the league is the Detroit Pistons at 15.
So as always, would love to hear where you guys think we're right, where you think we're wrong, and give us your rankings too. How is the Eastern Conference going to shape out when all is said and done in terms of regular season standings? We got to get going. We've got an interview both of us are really pumped for. So we're going to be signing out here. Again, keep in mind, keep in touch with the show, hoopsologypod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media, follow our YouTube channel, and get on one of our podcast feeds wherever you're doing that for regular updates every week and some excellent interviews all the way through the season. Enjoy NBA tip-off when it comes. We're excited for it to get here. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. Peace out.
See you next time.